cannot believe I'm getting ready to say this, but this is the very last video of 2023. I am in awe of how quickly this year has just flown by. That being said, I have been putting out my Christmas decor, and I have been bringing out my winter decor, and I have been crafting. So let me show you what I did. In one of my previous videos, I had mentioned that I purchased these crafting pumpkins at the Dollar Tree when they have them back in the fall. And I purchased quite a few of them, and I keep them in my craft stash because I craft with them nearly year round. And so I pulled 3 of them out of my craft stash, and I had purchased this yarn at Michael's for a very good price. I had a coupon, and so I purchased this yarn at Michael's, and then I took my little knife that I use for foam, and I cut the stem out of the pumpkin, and I just started winding it around. I secured the end kind of inside the hole with some hot glue, and I just started winding it around the pumpkin. It was a little time consuming. I did stop every so often and just drop a bead of hot glue so that I made sure that all of my strands of yarn were laying evenly on the foam, and because I didn't want any gaps and I didn't want the foam to show through. Now, if you do not have any of these crafting pumpkins, you actually could purchase the foam balls, and you could cut them in half, and you could do this craft that way as well. But these for $1.25 are such a bargain, and I pick them up and I just kind of save them because I use them in floral arrangements and I use them in all sorts of things. So I just started wrapping this pumpkin around until I got to the outside edge, and then I started with the hot glue gun, and I would just run a little tiny bead in the circular motion, and I would just lay my yarn in until I had the little center all completely covered up. I trimmed the end off with some scissors and made sure everything was tucked in nicely. I did one side, and then I started with the next side and did the exact same thing because I wanted each side to be symmetrical and look exactly the same. And like I said, it was very easy, but it was a little bit time consuming. You can use any kind of yarn that you would like for this craft. I had picked this yarn up strictly for the color. It was kind of a taupe color with a fleck of gray in it, and it kind of looked like a snowman that the kids had gone out in the yard and created, and it kind of had little flecks of leaves and dirt in it, and it just had a rustic look to it. And so I knew when I seen the yarn that that's exactly what I wanted to create with it, was a snowman. So I finally have one of the pumpkin balls all covered up with the yarn. I wanted my next one to look just a little bit different, so I took a piece of masking tape and 3 strands of the yarn, and I taped it to the top of the table that I was working on, and I cut the ends off even, and then I just started with a very, very loose braid. I didn't do a tight braid. I just braided it as loosely as I possibly could because this yarn is not really all that chunky, but I wanted it to give the illusion of it being chunky. So I just made sure that I had a very loose braid. You can use a more substantial yarn, but like I said, I picked this out for the color. And so then I just took my knife and I cut the stem out of the top of this pumpkin as well. And then I just started hot gluing my braid around the perimeter of the pumpkin, and I made sure that the loops, the ends were all nice and connected together so that it did not look like it was cut and pieced. I wanted it to look like a continual braid. So I once again laid out 3 strands and taped them down, and I got my 3 strands together and grouped them, and then I cut the ends off even, and then I did another really loose braid, and then it was just kind of a look and see process to see how much yarn that I needed, and kind of a trial and error. on my part, and just to kind of figure out how much I needed. So then I just started at the end where I had made the end cut of the other, and I hot glued that together. And once again, making sure that I looked like it was a continual piece of yarn, and my fingers were getting just a little bit burnt. So I got my little silicone applicator out and to kind of save my fingers a little bit, and then I just ran a little bit of hot glue around the perimeter of the pumpkin until I got to the end of my piece. I did put the pumpkins together so that I would know how much braiding that I needed to make, because you don't need to cover the whole entire thing, but when you put your pumpkins together and you stack them up, you don't want to have anything showing through, and you want it to look like it's a continual piece. So I did kind of stack every now and then my pumpkins together to make sure that there wasn't a gap in between the yarn of the pumpkin. I am going to use this juncture neck scarf that I bought at the Dollar Tree, and this is perfect to slip around the top of the pumpkin, and this is going to make kind of the hat of my little snowman. So on my third pumpkin, I put the hat on first. I just hot glued it around the top of the pumpkin, and I made sure it was all nice and secure, and I trimmed off any excess pieces, and then I just started just a bead of hot glue around the underneath edge of the hat, and then I just started laying my yarn in underneath the hat, my little juncture neck scarf. I wanted my snowman to have a different pattern of yarn on each section, so that is why I'm hot gluing it on the underneath side of the hat on this one around the perimeter, and then the other I had done kind of around it in an up and down pattern. So I have a braid and up and down pattern, and then I have one that goes diagonally. That makes any sense at all. So once I had everything glued on correctly and I knew that there wasn't going to be any foam showing, I just took a piece of my yarn and I made a really tight knot and gathered the top of this scarf together. I did clip off the little tag so nothing white would show, and then I just kind of fluffed it up, and I started, and I cut the seams first, and then I just started cutting little sections in the top of this scarf so that it would kind of look like fringe. The nice thing when working with these scarves in a project like this is that they're already sewn and they're bound and they have a nice seam so that you're not going to have any ravels or nothing's going to come undone. So I just cut down probably about 1.5 inches, and I made some nice little fringe pieces on the top of this little hat for my snowman. This is another thing that when they come out at the Dollar Tree with, that I usually buy a couple, 3 of, because you never know what you might create with them, and they're so much fun to craft with and DIY with, are the neck scarves and the little neck wraps that they've started carrying. And I like to get them in the solid black, but the little gray ones with the snowflakes, those are a lot of fun too. And they do have some plaid every now and then as well. But I do try to pick up the black ones because I never know exactly what I'm going to do. And so it's kind of nice to have just a solid color in my craft stash. And they're just so useful for so many things. And it's a bargain to find a piece of fabric for $1.25. I mean, I don't know if y'all have priced fabric lately, but oof, it kind of just gives me the chills sometimes when I go and see what they want per yard. So I picked up this kids size black neck scarf. And so it was still just a little bit too wide, so I took the little card that it was hanging on and I used that as a guide, and I just kind of folded it and I cut it lengthwise using that little card as a guide, and I cut it in half. Once I had it cut in half, it was the absolute perfect size for a neck scarf for my little snowman. Then I realized that I had not glued my pieces together, and my glue gun is on high temp, so it's just really smoking like a house fire. But nothing is on fire, I promise. So I just glued all of my pieces together and set them right on top of each other, and I held them until they were nice and secure and the glue had set. Then it was just time to add my little last embellishment to it, and I took this little neck scarf that I cut in two, and I thought maybe it was just a little bit too long. So I ran a bead of hot glue kind of down where I thought that it needed to be, and so I hot glued the two pieces together, and then after they were really good and secure, then I cut it in two. So I had two pieces of the scarf, but they were glued together before I actually started, pulling and tugging, because the end of this has fringe on it that was just really cute, and I didn't want to interrupt the original fringe that was on the scarf. So once you get it folded and you get it kind of wrapped around the back of the snowman or the neck, then you'll never see that you actually had to cut and glue and piece the two pieces together. And then I just kind of tied it in kind of a square knot, I believe that's what it's called, and just a square knot off to the side, and gave it just a little bit of sass, and it turned out really cute. This was a really simple project, but I thought it came out darling, and it looks a lot more high-end and expensive than what it actually is, and I thought he came out really cute. He didn't need a lot of embellishments or frills or fancies or bows or anything. He just looks cute, just sitting on my side table and ready to welcome in the winter, because we haven't had snow yet in Southwest Missouri. And so, but I'm ready for it. Anytime that it's ready to fall, I'm ready to welcome it. So that is my little snowman. I hope that if you recreate him, that you have just as much fun as I did when I made him. Thank you for coming on my little crafting journey with me, and welcome to all my new subscribers. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope for the next year that you have a magnificent year. And I know each year brings new promise and new challenges, and life's not always going to be fabulous, but I'm a believer, so I know that whatever I face in the coming year, I'm not going to be facing it alone. I have the strength of my Redeemer to help me along the way. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell so that you know when I've uploaded my next video. Give me a thumbs up. And thank you so much for watching Crafts Last in Chaos. And y'all have a very happy and wonderful new year.